Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and this time we're talking about Michael Pachter, an industry analyst, and how I feel he's pretty much always wrong when it comes to Nintendo. So recently we got some recent quotes from him in an interview where he said some things that I feel like are definitely questionable. So we're going to be questioning those things, talking about how I think they're just kind of entirely inaccurate, and also sort of going over the history of different things Michael Pachter has said about Nintendo. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about for particular things. He has a job for a reason. But at least when it comes to Nintendo, it seems like that whenever he talks about them, it's really just kind of the opposite. So we're going to be going over that history, and I'm going to be highlighting why what he's saying is just straight up wrong. So yeah, that's what we're talking about today. Now, before we jump into things, I want to quickly talk about my social media. There's a Twitter page, a Discord community, a Patron page, and a Twitch channel. If you are interested in any of that, check it all out. It's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, subscribe. And here's just another additional note before we jump into things. This video probably won't be that greatly edited or anything. I just got back from vacation last night, but I really want to talk about this situation regarding Michael Pachter and all the different things he says about Nintendo. So let's now talk about that. Before I get into Pachter's recent statements, I want to talk about some of the things he said in the past that are, well, they didn't age very well, to put it simply. So here's one. Pachter: Nintendo Switch price is problematic, and launch lineup is underwhelming. And here I highlighted, he said, sales beyond the first year will be affected by third-party software support. The underpowered Switch is unlikely to attract much. Yeah, that's just wrong. That did not age well, did it? Because the Switch is doing incredibly well, and it had a slew of games in 2017. Yes, they were very strong, but what happened in 2017 greatly exceeded expectations, even Nintendo's, and definitely Pachter's. But going beyond that, the Switch continued to do well. Even now, with 2020 and how slow the year has been in terms of like big brand new Nintendo games, Nintendo's still doing incredibly well, especially considering the circumstances with the pandemic. You can maybe argue it's helped them. But the point is, Pachter said that the Switch wouldn't do well, and it has done incredibly well. The Switch may end up being one of, if not the best selling Nintendo system of all time. It has that kind of potential. So let's continue on with other things Pachter has said in the past. Pachter: Vita will rob Nintendo market share. And here I highlighted, US analyst Michael Pachter believes the PS Vita will achieve what the PSP did not and eat into Nintendo's handheld market share. In case you didn't know, the Vita flopped terribly. Not saying it's not a cool system, I think it is a cool system, but in terms of sales, it just didn't perform, and the 3DS was actually really the main part of Nintendo's money-making during the Wii U 3DS generation, during that time of the PSP Vita as well. The 3DS did well. Was it as successful as the Nintendo DS? No, it was not as successful as the Nintendo DS, but it still did pretty good, and Michael Pachter was wrong. So I'm sure you could probably go and find some article somewhere where Pachter said something about Nintendo, and it may be somewhat right. For example, he said the Wii U wasn't doing well. Well, yeah, the Wii U wasn't doing well. Everyone saw that coming. That's something where I guess technically Pachter would have been correct, but everyone was correct about it. That wasn't really any sort of crazy prediction there. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is that Pachter isn't technically always wrong about Nintendo, but when it really matters, when it comes to things that are actually about predicting what's going to happen or saying how they're doing, Pachter is usually wrong, and actually the information he suggests is factually incorrect. So let's point out some of the things he said recently. I don't really understand the whole hybrid concept. I think that was something Iwata did to differentiate the Switch, and he wanted to have a console that would go back and forth from console to portable. But I don't think most people play it in both modes. I would say that maybe 20% of Switch owners play both modes, and I think most Switch owners play it in handheld only. So I honestly don't understand the whole point of the hybrid. Who cares? Play it as a handheld. So before I give my opinions on that part of what he said, let's kind of debunk this 20% thing of Switch owners only playing both modes. Nintendo Senior Vice President for Sales and Marketing Doug Bowser said the playtime split between docked and undocked play on the Switch is about even, about 50% in the dock and 50% away from the dock. The latter time chunk includes both tabletop play and fully handheld play. Bowser said the company doesn't currently monitor which undocked mode a player is using at any given time. So to be fair, that article's from 2018 and it's speaking on information from the first year of the Switch, but that gives us a pretty good idea of how gamers actually play the Switch. It's about even, it's about halfway, and Pachter just straight up brought up a number, 20%, out of nowhere. It's misinformation, really. It seems like to me he just brought up that random 20% number that isn't at all true to push his false narrative or argument here. People play both modes, not just handheld mode. They play both modes, and from what Nintendo has said in the past, about evenly. If I were to base it off the way I personally play, it's a mixture. It goes up and down depending on the game and the situation. Like I said, I was just on vacation, so I played mostly in portable mode. I did bring my dock to play in the hotel occasionally, but mostly when I was on the plane or the car, I would play in portable mode, and that worked out really well. But now that I'm home, and I have my big screen television, I play my games on there most of the time. That's just how I do it, but if I go away, which does happen with frequency, or, you know, if I have off time at work or something, I play in portable mode a lot. It really kind of depends. I would say it's like 60-40, and that sort of goes up or down depending on the game and the situation. Point is, I don't think my situation is strange. I think most people are similar. They use both modes, and the great thing about the Switch is that you can switch seamlessly. It's not some sort of weird situation where you have to wait for it to all load in or things like that. It's a seamless transition, and the Switch is flexible because it's both kinds of systems. It offers both portable and home console options, which is where the Switch gets a lot of its value. But let's move on to the next thing Pachter said. And Nintendo isn't that smart. You never know what they will do next. But I think the smart thing would be to get rid of the Switch console and only have the Switch Lite. Get rid of the docking station and get rid of playing on the TV. Maybe offer a Fire Stick style dongle for those who don't want to play it on the TV. But I think that a portable only Switch makes the most sense, it's the cheapest to make, and they can make the screen nicer and build quality better. Firstly, I just want to say that to suggest that Nintendo isn't smart, I would say is not a smart thing to say. We recently got information that the Switch is doing incredibly well. I'll just read this. Of every console on the market right now, Nintendo Switch has sold the most units for 22 consecutive months, beating a record previously set by the Xbox 360. The point I'm trying to make with that is that the Switch is doing incredibly well. It is dominating the industry right now, and to suggest that Nintendo's ideas with the Switch aren't smart, again, I think is not smart. The Switch is doing incredibly well, and I feel like what Pachter is suggesting is just not really good from multiple angles. So let me explain. He's suggesting that Nintendo should go with doing just a Switch Lite, but that goes against with what Nintendo has been doing throughout the many years, especially with their handheld-like systems. Their handheld systems have multiple revisions, and what we've seen with the Switch is that they want to be flexible and give players options. We have the base Switch, which gives us a lot of options, and then we have the Switch Lite for those who don't really care for the TV mode. You have that option. They're appealing to both audiences here, so they can sell more and make more money. And this is a prediction, but also there are reports suggesting it. There's a Switch revision coming out next year. It wouldn't surprise me if that's more of a beefier, more powerful version for people who want more of a catered home console experience. I still think it'll be portable, but you get my point here. Nintendo will continually release revisions, not rely on just one single SKU, because they want to be able to appeal to different audiences here, because they are smart and they are trying to make money. They're not being dumb and only relying on one single SKU, as Pachter is suggesting they do. And actually, there's another thing he said there that really bothers me. He's talking about Nintendo maybe using a Fire Stick-like dongle thing. I'm not saying that wouldn't be a terrible thing to have for the Switch Lite, because I do think it would be nice for Switch Lite owners who want to have that option but didn't want to get the base Switch at whatever point. To give them that option would, I think, be nice, maybe offer that. But there are a lot of disadvantages with relying on just a little Fire Stick-like thing. One, you're not relying on a connected power source in the dock, meaning the Switch cannot overclock and run at higher speeds and overall present better visuals on the television. If you rely on a little Fire Stick thing, then you can't do that. There's no power source there. The Switch is a mobile system and has to rely on a battery So the Switch, well, it won't work out really well. I just don't think that's a smart solution to the problem overall. There needs to be a dock if you want to be playing console games most of the time. And the other thing is that the Switch dock has other features, such as being able to connect with a wired connection, for example, or plug in other controllers and things like that. But having a Fire Stick dongle, you no longer have that option either. And this entire point he brings up is reliant on this false idea that most people don't even play in docked mode. A lot of people do. Half of Switch owners do. So I just think that's kind of another really, really bad take. But on to the final thing he said here. I am not sure what we will see from them next generation. If there will be upgrades to processing power, they should at least put some flash memory in it so you can download some games and not have to screw around with cartridges. So from this final quote, I think it sort of backs up what I've been thinking. He's not really speaking from a strong knowledge base here. He's suggesting that Nintendo put in more flash memory, which is expensive, to sort of alleviate these storage issues with the Switch. I want to point out that literally the prior point, he talked about lowering the cost for the Switch. Putting in more flash memory will increase the cost for the Switch. Yes, having more flash memory would be nice, but you can just put it in an SD card. I have a 400GB micro SD card. It was like 30, 40 bucks, and prices are only going to continue to go down. In contrast with the next generation systems, you're going to have to buy solid state drives to expand your storage space, and those can get really, really expensive. So I feel like right now with the Switch, with its limited flash memory and having SD cards, that's fine. Is it the best possible solution? Maybe there's some things that can be improved upon, but suggesting that flash memory is the way they should go about doing things, I don't really agree with that. On top of that, he's talking about ditching cartridges. And I do agree that the industry is moving in the direction of all digital. I don't want to see cartridges go away or discs go away, physical media, but we are moving in that direction. But at least for the time being, cartridges are great because you don't have to entirely rely on your flash memory or SD cards because the game is on a cartridge. And the cartridge works out pretty well because it's a handheld system. It's not a disc media. You don't have to have a disc drive inside the Switch, so there's less space that needs to be used by doing that, and it takes up less power. And on top of that, cartridges, they read fairly quick, so loading times aren't that bad because of it. It's a pretty good form of physical media. Going all digital maybe at some point might be viable, but for the time being, I don't think it's a good idea. And, well, I mean, it's just, yeah, Pachter suggesting that we get rid of physical media. I think most of you want to keep physical media for as long as we can. So, point is, Michael Pachter is saying a lot of things about Nintendo that are not really true. They're not really smart. They're not really coming from a strong knowledge base. I think he's saying things that are just factually incorrect. And the point I'm trying to make here isn't that I think Michael Pachter is an idiot. I'm actually sure that he's very intelligent for particular things. He has a job for a reason. He's good at some things. But when it comes to predicting Nintendo, it's so bad that I feel like he's just doing it on purpose. I feel like that really the reason why people interview him when it comes to Nintendo is because they know he's going to say something that's going to bring in a lot of clicks because, well, it's ridiculous, really. And you shouldn't believe it. So whenever you see a Michael Pachter headline, not saying it's not something that's worth looking into and talking about because it's fun to sort of debate these things, but it's not going to happen. Historically speaking, Michael Pachter has not really been good when it comes to suggesting what may happen for Nintendo in the future. If anything, he's really good at telling you the opposite of what's going to happen. So take that into consideration. That's what I think, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is Honest Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.